Hi there. Monday morning, which means it's time to say hello to our business correspondent, Chris Gibbons. Chris, hello, welcome. As I say, it's a Monday morning, but not just any old Monday. It's a Monday that marks the start of the second half of the year, which, given the awful first half, is probably a very good thing. Just how bad was that first half, in fact?
Jeremy, a very good morning. Welcome back. Good to see you. Good to see you in the flesh. To answer your question, globally, it was something of a shocker. Record highs on Wall Street in early January, record highs for the JSE in mid-March, and then 6 months or so later, how do we look? Well, the JSE all shares down just over 10% from the start of the year, nearly 15% since that record high. Top 40, much the same, just over 15% down since the March high. London, perhaps surprisingly, down only 2.4% since the start of the year. New York, though, a very different story. Markets there have had their worst first half year since 1970, since Richard Nixon was in the White House. The Dow down 15%, the S&P 500 down over 20%, the NASDAQ down nearly 30%. In other words, the worst start to the year for decades. The bulls have vanished, the bears are prowling.
And it's not just the stock markets, is it either?
Far from it. Oil, Brent crude, up nearly 50% since the start of the year, as you may have noticed when you fill your car up. Copper, Dr. Copper as they call it, at a 17-month low. Dr. Copper, well, so called because it's considered to be a very accurate bellwether for the general economy. You know, people start building things, selling things, they need more copper for the wiring and so on. In this case, the good doctor is not very healthy at all.
Which tells me that investors are worried about recession.
Correct. Recession in the United States, and when that happens, very likely to hurt the rest of the planet too, as we have discussed before. Recession, well, in fact, it's one of three very big problems, the others being inflation and the war in Ukraine. Inflation, which stems from governments, the US in particular, overstimulating their COVID-hit economies. That's led to higher interest rates. In turn, those are threatening to choke back those economies and tip them into recession. And then, of course, we have that Russian invasion of Ukraine, no end in sight there. And I don't think it's unfair to say that that has made everything at least 50% worse. That oil price, for example, you can lay that directly at the door of Mr. Putin and the Kremlin.
No end in sight, as you say, and a desperate wave of Western sanctions, along with a reportedly high casualty rate on the battlefield. The Russians don't seem to be hurting, though.
Pretty much the reverse, in fact, Jeremy. It is a cruel irony, but that higher oil price, along with higher prices for gas and coal, are helping Moscow pay for the war. Vladimir Putin may be many things, but he has managed the Russian economy very conservatively over the past few years. So they have substantial foreign reserves, stockpiles of gold, all that sort of thing. And don't forget, they're still selling oil and particularly gas into Europe. They've had one debt default so far, not because they don't have the money, but because the Americans refuse to allow them to pay.
Does it continue like this? I mean, isn't the West trying to make the sanctions tougher?
Yes, indeed. The G7 has just had a meeting last week, in fact, at which they discussed implementing a cap on the price of Russian oil. How would that work? Well, it's not 100% clear, but the G7 leaders were talking about a ban on the transportation and insurance of Russian oil sold above a certain price. Sounds like a good idea? Not really. First, there are still plenty of people prepared to buy Russian oil, especially at a fat discount. China is the main customer, followed by India, but South Africa, we've also indicated an interest. And I wonder how many of us would resolutely continue to support Ukraine if several shiploads of Mr. Putin's oil got our petrol price down 3 or 4 rand a litre. The other side of the coin, even scarier, Putin might simply decide not to play at all and cut output. Investment bank JP Morgan Chase put out a note to clients last week saying the Russians could afford to slash production by 5 million barrels a day without seriously hurting their economy. A 3 million barrel a day reduction would see the price of oil in London, Jeremy, go to $190 a barrel. A 5 million barrel reduction would push the price of oil to $380 per barrel. Now, if Brent's currently around the $115 per barrel mark, and that's giving us a petrol price about 26 rand a litre, therefore $380 a barrel would imply a petrol price of 85 rand a litre. And that, I think, would just bring economic devastation in its wake.
No, it doesn't bear thinking about. And it would just be, it wouldn't just be the individual, it would be, it'd probably finish Eskom off. I saw some headlines over the weekend about already having spent 4 billion rand so far this year to keep the lights on.
A story in Business Day, in fact, which gives the figure as 4.14 billion on diesel since January against a budget of just 2 billion rand. Now take that oil price to $380 a barrel. Eskom's diesel bill would be well over 13.5 billion rand, assuming, of course, we had the same level of load shedding. Who knows about that? It could certainly get worse as more and more of the old coal-fired power stations break down. One interesting headline at the moment, Fin24 reporting National Treasury working on a credible plan to restructure Eskom's balance sheet and deal with the 400 billion rand debt mountain. But it could also get better, if government just gets out of the way and allows the private sector to move into power generation more effectively.
Yeah, jeepers. Load shedding, all these power cuts, cutting into the economy, massive, I suppose.
Jeremy, when you hit stage 6, where we're at the moment, it takes a severe toll on everyone. Consumers, workers, South Africa's businesses, those at least that don't have backup generators or solar installations, particularly hard hit the smaller businesses that can't afford the extensive backup of their larger brethren with the stronger balance sheets. Mind you, even the big players are taking strain. Growthpoint Holdings, the country's biggest landlord, has told tenants at one of its Johannesburg sites it's struggling to source diesel supplies. It's warning its customers, make your own contingency plans to secure the integrity of your own business and IT infrastructure. Consumer confidence well down. The FNB Bureau for Economic Research quarterly index, second quarter of this year, is coming at minus 25 index points. Its lowest level ever, bar one slot, minus 33 in the same period 2 years ago when we hit our first full COVID lockdown. Stanlib's chief economist Kevin Ling says it's a number that is consistent with a recession. And don't forget, we're still fighting inflation. The Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee meets this month. I, for one, would be very surprised if we didn't get another 50 basis point rate hike, 0.5%, in other words.
And in the middle of this, we are now being banned from burgers made from plants. Well, burgers. I'm no longer allowed to say things like vegan biltong or plant-based meatballs. Frankly, I've never seen such rubbish.
Jeremy, 100%. This is clearly from the same team that prohibited, if you remember, the sale of open-toed sandals to stop the spread of coronavirus. Truly amazing. Let's start at the beginning on this one. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, as it's now known, sent out a set of notices saying that meat analogues, as you say, like a chorizo and red pepper vegetarian sausage, may no longer use product names prescribed and reserved for processed meat products. Retailers have been told to remove the products from their shelves. This includes Woolworths and its popular egg substitute, Just Egg. Now, given that these products have been around for a good few years now, I have no idea why this assault has just been launched. No prizes for guessing that someone in the meat industry or poultry and eggs has got their knickers in a knot about just how well these plant-based substitutes are doing. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally am very partial to real red meat. But I really am becoming more and more aware of vegan items on restaurant menus and people who are going down the vegan road. And the true irony in all of this, of course, is that our own government, of which the Department of Agriculture is a part, is committed to lowering our carbon footprint. Moving away from animal-based foods to plant-based is a vital component of that journey. Very clearly, and as usual, the government's left hand doesn't know what its right hand is doing.
Okay, Chris, time is running out against us. Sum up for me. The first half of 2022 is behind us. What does the second half look like?
Jeremy, I don't think it's going to be much better anytime soon. Inflation will be brought under control eventually, middle of next year, somewhere around there, I think. But along the way, we're going to see higher interest rates and higher prices all around, particularly food and fuel. For me, the key that unlocks the door is peace in Ukraine. That would take immediate pressure off the oil price. That would ripple through the global economy very quickly. But with the fighting continuing, there's just too much risk and too many imponderables for any investment other than the really short term to make much sense. Jeremy.
Phew, okay, right. Well, it doesn't look that good, does it? Chris, thank you very much once again for your insight. Chris Givens, our business editor on Mansfield Today. If you enjoyed that show, hit the subscribe button and we'll hopefully see you next Monday with the Business Report with Chris Givens right here on Mansfield Today. Nice to have you with us. Bye-bye.